part of the context of a spiritual path, a huge part of it, is uncovering and realizing our ability to be with our experience as it is in the moment. On one hand, we are actors on the stage. There will be a time when our lives here on this plane will be over. And our being, our consciousness will return to its source, however that works. We won't really know how it works until we come to that place. And at that point, we're no longer actors on the stage. There's a tradition that says the work that a person does, it actually says it for a tzaddik, but I think we can apply it to really anyone, is that the work that we do in the world blossoms in a different way, and often a more powerful way, after we leave the world, because we plant seeds through our actions in our lives. But we shouldn't think of those seeds as impotent when we're done, when we leave this world, but rather those are seeds that continue to blossom. And we're constantly reaping both the benefits and probably the negativity also of seeds that have been planted by others without even knowing where they're coming from. There's like this infinite stream that goes infinitely backwards of people's actions and seeds that they've planted in the world. And so while we're here on this plane, we have the potentially anxiety-producing, stress-producing, anger-producing, frustration-producing task of being an actor and of contributing to the story. And when we see our contributions and desires for that story not blossoming the way we want it to blossom, it can be an antagonizing experience. What spirituality brings us is it helps us to uncover, and this is what, it's at the core of all the teachings and the practice when we come into silence, is to recognize that at the same time as we are actors in the world, we also have the ability to be an open space within which this moment is unfolding. To just be the space. Because we have different levels of our being. We have our bodies that do actions. We have our minds that think of what we're going to do. We have our emotions that respond and are triggered by things that are happening. But at the deepest level, we have this open space. And in that openness, we have the ability to do something which is really, really radical, especially for nowadays, which is to actually just be an open presence, acknowledging the truth of the moment. So little space is given for that. I wonder sometimes what course humanity would take if that was part of our protocol. If everybody took a moment in the midst of the flow of what everybody's doing, what everybody believes, and the conflicts and the clashes and so on, to just say, oh, this is what's arising right now. It's a radical thing because our minds tend to be so conditioned. That's why we can have such radically different points of views and clash, and not to mention all the manipulation that's going on in the world based on that. And we won't go into all of that right now. This is a meditation retreat, but we know that it's there. One of the qualities that's most challenging to work with is the truth of uncertainty. It's uncertain. We don't know how it's going to come out. What we do know is this moment. We know what is arising in our experience at this moment, and we don't have certainty. We have a tendency to do one or the other, to say we will persevere and we will achieve goodness, we will get there, or to go into despair and say it's all to hell, it's all going to fall apart, we're going in a bad direction, or humanity is not even going to survive. We have a tendency to project in one way or the other because psychologically that sense of just resting in a thought of how it's going to be in the future is more comfortable when we don't know the spaciousness. But when we do know the spaciousness, then we can really relax and we can acknowledge the uncertainty, and we can be renewed and have energy and inspiration and wisdom and that positive motivation, that wholesome desire to be a force of good for real, not just to execute what we think is what needs to happen, but to actually be of service. That's a real thing that we can uncover when we, to the degree that we can connect with that spaciousness. So it's so important to balance our work in the world, not to bypass our work in the world, not to be like Korach, who says, oh, it's all God anyway, so we don't need to do anything. To participate, but to be grounded in that widest of perspectives. You know, we can use our mind to create a wide perspective too. We can just reflect for a moment and contemplate, wow, humanity's been writing things down for something like 7,000 or so years, maybe a little more than that. And before that, humanity's been around for, I can't remember exactly, I think 150 million years, something like that, before we started writing this down. So we don't have a good record of what was going on before then. And we're at a point in history. And just reflecting on that can help us to expand our point of view, to get a wider view. But even without those thoughts, just learning how to be the presence, the open space of presence within which our emotions are arising, within which our thoughts are arising, within which our experience of others around us that we meet moment to moment are happening, is a natural expanding into a perspective that can allow us to live both in heaven and on earth. If we want to bring heaven down to earth, we have to be in touch with the heaven. That's not bypass. That's not ignoring the realities of the world. That's tapping into, that's the same thing as like saying, you know what, I'm going to breathe. We wouldn't say, oh, there's trouble in the world, so I'm not going to breathe anymore. That's absurd, right? But there's this other dimension also that we need to tap into that is like breathing, but on the deeper level. It's breathing for our soul, for our spirit, for giving us for allowing us to taste the goodness of simple being. And when we taste that goodness, we're in a much better place to put forth our best effort in the world.